And good evening again, students. I trust that you are well. Kindly note that the recording has started. Okay. And also note that your microphones and your cameras have been disabled. But if there's any questions or concerns, students, please let me know in the chat. All right. Like I said, we are going to, our first session is for 1501. All right. There's a comment over here. It says, sir, could you kindly please send the link for this class? All right, let me do that. Okay. Sorry, students, there was a comment. There's a question in the chat. So I'm just replying to that comment. So that is the link to this class. Students, can you all see my screen? Well, if you can see your name over here, or you can see names and my indicator, you can see my screen. Is my voice also clear enough? Right? Perfect. Like I said, students, to avoid any confusion, from now up until 8:30, it is ECS 1501. ECS 1500 we will have from 8:30 onwards. All right, are we sorted? So ECS 1500, ECS, sorry, I just need to take off the caps lock over here. Will be from 2030 onwards. Right. We go. Sorted. Okay. So you can all see my screen. You can all hear my voice. So let's get into the nitty-gritty. So we've had our session on Monday, if you guys can remember. And we have made some good progress in terms of utilities. All right. I know that there is there's an assignment that is due in the next few days. So the focus was on the theory of demand. Students, please note that the theory of demand is utilities. All right. And we have, there's the answers to that question on utility for the 2017 paper. This is a past paper with the memo as well. So I'm going to share it with you again in the SharePoint folder. I've shared the link with you last week as well. So you should have been able to access this paper. But on Monday, students, we've looked at the 2016 paper, which is this one over here. Right? We've looked at this one. And then I believe we ended off at question 39, if I'm correct. Like I said, we've made some very good progress. It was relatively productive. Also, students, please note that you can reach out to CT and TUT at unisa.ac.za for the playlist, the link to the recording playlist. All right, so we did not have a session last week, Thursday. We had the Thursday session on the 25th, it was on Monday. But that was also recorded. And that recording should also be available. So kindly send an email as soon as possible to CT and TUT requesting the recording playlist. But let's continue. So this is where we left off, students, where we left it at, we did question 38 and question 39. Right, we found our answers to be number 1 for 38 and number 4 for question 39. I can even show you the solutions to number 38 and number 39. That is what we did. Where's that? There we go. On the 25th, which was on Monday. The 25th was on Monday. Yes, there we go. And this is the calculation that we did. Right. I've also uploaded the information, students, onto the SharePoint folder. So you should be able, I will upload it again. So you should be able to find it there. Are we sorted? Are we sorted, students? Are we happy? Perfect. Yes, let's continue with those questions. Right. So this is the paper that we are working on. So question 40, let's zoom in a bit over here. Right. Let's zoom in. SIPO consumes two goods, which is A and B. And then of course we have PA and PB, MUA, MUB, TUA and TUB. That represents the prices, the marginal utilities, and the total utilities of goods A and goods B. Okay. The question says, when will SIPO achieve consumer equilibrium? Now, in order to achieve consumer equilibrium, students, remember there's now goods A and goods B. All right. That means there has to be a condition where the weighted marginal utilities of good A is the same as the weighted marginal utility of good B. All right. Also, we've rewritten the weighted marginal utility. It is also known as marginal utility per rand, where you take the marginal utility of that particular good A and you divide it by the price of good A. You see, that must be equal to the marginal utility of good B divided by the price of B. You see, and this condition over here, students, right, can be rewritten. If you manipulate this condition over here, it can also be written in this way. Marginal utility of good A divided by marginal utility of good B is equal, right? Is equal to the price of good A divided by the price of good B. You see, hence our answer over here for consumer equilibrium for question 40 is number 2. That is just we've just rewritten this condition over here into this form. And that is our answer over there. Because look, the condition for consumer equilibrium is where your weighted marginal utilities are equal to one another. Or in other words, the marginal utilities per rand are equal to one another. Are we together, students, with our answer for question number 40? Are we together, students? We also have our notes open as well as a backup. Okay, there's also, I've done it with the EASP cohort. I don't know how many of you attended last night, but yeah. Anyway, just check your email, students, as well. I did send out that bulk email with the link, so kindly ensure that you attend from next week Wednesday as well. So there is our notes on consumer theory. We always fall back to our notes. Okay. Now let's move on. That was question 40. Let's look at question 41. It says question 41 is based on the table below, right? So what we did, it looks a little bit like a dog's breakfast over here, but let's just do some housekeeping, all right? So these the blue information that you see over there for marginal utility, that wasn't given to us, students. We calculate that on our own, okay? So we were given the quantity consumed 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We were also given the total utilities. And as per the theory, students, the more you consume, you see what happens to total utility. Total utility also increases. However, at the same time, yes, marginal utility sometimes increases, but it decreases after some time, which is in this example, it increases to a point and then starts to decrease. All right. But please note that according to theory, students, right, the more we consume, the higher the total utility. However, total utility will increase and reach a maximum. Thereafter, it will decline, right? Also, the more we consume, the lower the marginal utility. Marginal utility will decline and reach zero. Once it reaches zero and thereafter, it will decline and go into the negative. And that is where we experience what is called disutility. Also, what you need to note is that when total utility is at its maximum, that is also the type that is also the condition at which marginal utility is equal to zero. When total utility is maximized, marginal utility is equal to zero. Right? Also, when total utility starts to decline, that's the point at which marginal utility goes into the negative. And that is where you experience disutility. When the marginal utility for one particular good is equal to zero, that is known as the point of satiation. And when the marginal utility is negative for a particular good, that is known as disutility. Also, students, please note that weighted marginal utility is also known as marginal utility per rand. Many times it is denoted as WMU, but it is also many times denoted as marginal utility over price. And this is a very, very important bit of information to know, students. That's why I put it in capital letters. It's at the first unit of any good or service. And this will really help you with your calculations. At the first unit of any good or service, you must always remember that your total utility and your marginal utility will always be equal to one another at the first unit. Are we together, students? Right? That is our context, our background. So whatever we do, every calculations that we attempt together in terms of utilities, we always bear that in mind. All right. Now let's continue with question 41. Okay. So we were given the quantity consumed over here, and we were given the total utilities over here. The question says, at which quantity consumed will diminishing marginal utility begin? That is when marginal utility will then start to decline. Do you see? We need to first calculate the margin. That's why we added up. We included another column over here with marginal utility. Remember, at the first unit, the total utility and the marginal utility are always equal to one another. That is what you see over here, right? And then marginal utility can be calculated as the difference in total utility when you increase your consumption. So how did we get to this 11 over here? It is just 16 minus 5. That is 11. That is the change in total utility when consumption increases by our additional unit. Do you see? How did we get to the 24? It is the 40 minus the 16. How did we get to the 20 over here? 60 minus 40. That's 20. How did we get to the 5 over here? It's 65 minus 60 is equal to 5. So basically what we've calculated over here, students, is our marginal utility. So now we can answer our question. Do you see? So the more we consume, consumption increase from 1 to 2. What happens to total utility? Total utility increases from 5 to 16. What happens to marginal utility? Marginal utility increases from 5 to 11. Again, consumption increases from 2 to 3. What happens to total utility? It increases from 16 to 14. What happens to marginal utility? It increases from 11 to 24. But now as we increase our consumption from 3 to 4, after the fourth unit of whatever good this is we consume, what happens? Total utility increases from 40 to 60 years, but marginal utility declines from 24 to 20. You see? So at what quantity consumed will diminishing marginal utility begin? That would be at quantity number. Are we together, students, with our answer for question 41? Are we sorted? Please note if there's any questions or concerns, students. All right. Please let me know in the chat. Are we sorted? By show of hands, did anybody attend the session that we had last night? Is there anybody sitting here that attended the session last night for ECS1501? All right, we have Tsekofatso and Neo and Mabel. Right, and probably 6 people more that attended. All right. But I will send you that solution as well, students. I will upload that solution that we did last night. Eh? So I think we can go over that example that we did last night as well. Okay, so let me just give me a second, students. Is here. Right. Well, this one is about the quotas and the chiprels and the maguinias. This is an interesting question, students. Because look, if you look at the one that we took from the exam of 2016, okay? We did that for, we were only given the total utilities of apples here and for bananas and for oranges. Do you see? We were also given the income over here, and it said the prices of apples was 10 rand, the prices of bananas was 10 rand, the prices of oranges was 10 rand. You see? And when we determined the consumer equilibrium, there was only one instance where the weighted marginal utilities were equal to one another. Are we together, students? In this example on page, in the question paper 2016 on page question 38 and 39, when we calculated our table, when we completed our table, and we determined the consumer equilibrium, there was only one instance where the weighted marginal utilities were equal to one another. Are we together? And that's why it made it easier for us to find our answer there. But if you were to look at this example that we did, students, as well, this one over here, with quotas, chiprels, and maguinias, you would see that we had 3 instances where the weighted marginal utilities were equal to one another. Now, please note, students, you will get examples where there will be more than one instance where the weighted marginal utilities are correct, not correct, but are equal to one another. But please note, only one of those instances will be our true consumer equilibrium. That is why I want to do this example with you as well. Okay, let's see if we can do some housekeeping over here. Let's zoom in a bit and do some housekeeping. Let me also join with my phone so that I can monitor the chat if there's any issues or concerns. All right. Students, are we all following? Can you all see? All right. We are all on the same wavelength. Okay, let me just do some housekeeping. This is an interesting question. All right, let us just do some housekeeping. Why isn't it working? Okay. It's not working at the moment now because I probably saved it. But please ignore all of this symbols over here. Not the symbols, but the ticks. All right. Let's read. It says, suppose a customer in South Africa has 500 Rand to spend on quotas, chiprels, and this is maguinias. I know the name is a little bit strike through over here, but that is maguinias. Okay. I've just heard a few weeks ago that maguinia is actually different than a fed cook. But anyway, we will keep that discussion for a later stage about fed cooks and maguinia. But anyway. So what we have over here is the quota, and the price of a quota is 40 Rand. These are made up values over here, student. Eh? That's 40 Rand, that's the value of a quota. And the chiprel, the value of a chiprel in this case is 30 Rand. And then we have maguinias. The value of the price of Maguinha is 16 Rand. So these were the values that was given to us students. Is the marginal utilities over here and the total utilities. And this marginal utility divided by the price, that is the weighted marginal utility or the marginal utility per rand. All right. Now you see over here, students, yes, total utilities was given to us. What you need to know according to theory is that at the first unit, the total utility and the marginal utility are equal to one another. That's what you see over here at the first unit of quarter. You also see it at the first unit of Chipperl. You also see it at the first unit of Maguinha over here. All right. That would make life so much easier for you students. In case you were given a table like in question 38 and 39, you were only given the total utilities. But from the total utilities, you need to calculate marginal utilities. And you need to calculate the weighted marginal utilities. You see, this will make your life so much easier because you need a starting point. All right. But in this example, these values were given, students. Okay. These values were given. Let's see. How did we get to this marginal utility value of 350? That is just 750 minus the 400. You see, 1030 minus 750, that gives us 280. 1250 minus 1030, that gives us 220. Do you see there? 1490 minus 1410 gives us 80. 1410 minus 1250 gives us 160. That is how we would calculate marginal utility from the total utility. We can also work backwards. 400 plus 350, that is 750 over there. 750 plus 280, that's 1030. 1030 plus 220, that's 1150. 1250 plus 160, that gives us 1410. 1410 plus 80, it gives us 1490. And then, of course, 1490 plus 40, it gives us 1530. That way, students, you can calculate your total utility from your marginal utility. Are we together? That, you know, these questions can be asked in any way, students. You can be given the total utilities or you can be given the marginal utilities. You need to calculate backwards as well. And this over here, students, is our weighted marginal utility. It is the marginal utility per rand. It is the marginal utility divided by the price. Remember, students, marginal utility divided by the price. It's not marginal utility divided by the units. It's marginal utility divided by the price. So let's see. How did we get this 10 over here? We took the marginal utility of 400. We divided it by 40, the price, and we got 10. We took the marginal utility of 350. We divided it by 40. We got 8.8 over here. We took the marginal utility of 280. We divided it by 40. That gave us 7 over there. 220 divided by 40, that's 5.5. 160 divided by 40, that's 4. 80 divided by 40, that's 2. 40 divided by 40, that is 1. That is how we would calculate our marginal utilities per rand or our weighted marginal utility. Are we together, students? That is basically what you are seeing in this table for quotas, for Chipperls, as well as for Maguinhas. Now, the question says, right, what is the total utility when the consumer is in equilibrium? So what is the consumer equilibrium condition? It is when the weighted marginal utility of quotas is equal to the weighted marginal utility of Chipperls, which is also equal to the weighted marginal utility of Maguinhas. Are we together? That is the condition that must hold for consumer equilibrium. Do you see? So we've tested it now. We now look at before we calculate the total utility at consumer equilibrium, we need to determine what is the consumer equilibrium. Do you see? So what we did over here is we looked at the marginal utilities per rand or the weighted marginal utility. This WMU is the same as the MU over price. Okay, just remember that because that is also in our notes. Now, there's a 10 over here, but there's no 10 over here, so we don't even bother because it is 3 goods. Do you see? That 10 has to appear 3 times. It cannot appear once, it cannot twice, it for that to be a condition of consumer equilibrium. Do you see? So 10 appears only once over here, and it doesn't appear over here. So we disregard that. We're not going to waste our time. 8.8 as well. There's no 8.8 here. There's no 8.8 there. Let's move on. There's a 7 over here. There's a 7 over there. But there is no 7 over there. And please, students, do not make the mistake of assuming that the 6.9 is equal to 7 because it is not. Are we together? In this case, there is a difference between 6.9 and 7. 6.9 is not 7. Are we sorted? Okay, so it cannot be 7. There's 5.5. There's no 5.5 here. So we move on. But there's a 4 over here. There's a 4 over there. And there's a 4 over there. Do you see? There's already one instance where this condition holds. Right? There's a 2 over here. There's a 2 over there. And there's a 2 over there. Do you see? The second instance where that condition holds. There's a 1 over here. There's a 1 over there. And there's a 1 over there. The third instance where this condition holds. Do you see? So in the previous example, we only had one instance where that condition holds. But over here, we have 3 instances where this condition holds. So what do we do now? We need to determine, because only one of these instances will be our true consumer equilibrium. Are we together? Only one of these instances over here, students, will be our true consumer equilibrium. All right, we're testing it now. The income that we received, that we were given, is 500. All right, and the prices of a quarter is 40 rand. The Chipperal is 30 rand, and the Maguinia is 16 rand. So let's look at our first instance. The first bundle is 5 quarters, 5 Chipperals, and 4 Maguinas, right? The second instance or bundle is where the 2 is 6 quarters, 6 Chipperals, and 5 Maguinas. And then the third instance is, right, where the 1 is, you go to the quantity that is 7 quarters, that is 7 Chipperals, and that is 6 Maguinas. We are now going to multiply the amount of quarters with the price of quarters and add that of Maguinas and Chipperals to see if it equals our total income of 500. You see, we tested the first instance. We took the 5 quarters multiplied by the price of quarters plus 5 Chipperals multiplied by the price of Chipperals plus 4 Maguinas multiplied by the price of Maguinas. And our final answer that we got over there was 414 rand. But 414 rand is not equal to our total income of 500. So hence, the first instance is not our true consumer equilibrium. Are we together? The first instance was not our true consumer equilibrium. So we disregard that. Then, of course, we looked at the third one because the second one was actually the correct one, our true consumer equilibrium. But we looked at the third one just for reference purposes. We took the 7 quarters multiplied by the price of quarters, plus 7 Chipperals multiplied by the price of Chipperals, plus 6 Maguinas multiplied by the price of Maguinas. And the total value that we got there is 586 rand, which is greater than the total income of 500. So again, if it is not equal, if it is less than or and greater than the income, it is not our true consumer equilibrium. So therefore, instance number 3 was also incorrect. If we were to go to instance number 2 over here, and we multiply the 6 quarters with the price of quarters plus the 6 chiprels multiplied by the price of chiprels plus the 5 magwinas multiplied by the price of magwinas. We got 240 plus 180 plus 80, and that equals to 500. That exhausts our income of 500, which means that instance number 2 was our true consumer equilibrium. You see. So therefore, we agreed that consumer equilibrium is 6 quarters, 6 chiprels, and 5 magwinas. So we can now answer our question of the total utility when the consumer is in equilibrium. We just took the total utility at 6 quarters plus the total utility at 6 chiprels plus the total utility at 5 magwinas, and we add them all together, and we got 2,854 utils over there. Are we together, students? So I want you to work through this example as well. Please note that you will get some examples where there are more than one instance where the consumer equilibrium condition holds, but only one of those instances will be your true consumer equilibrium. All right, let's move on. Let's see if we can maybe squeeze in a few questions on production and cost theory as well as we move along. Okay. Are we still sorted, students? Are we happy? Everything in order? I know time flies, but like I said, next week, students, I will endeavor to have our 1500 session on the Monday. Okay. Alrighty then. Let's continue. So that was just a previous example. So we finished with question 41. Let's look at question 42. Question 42 says, which of the following statements is correct? Now, this is with regards to the short run and the long run, students. Please note, did I type it here in our notes when we move on? This is actually a formula sheet, but I've typed some information over here about the aim of the firm. But what you also need to know, students, about just some context on the short run and the long run. Right? Please note that in production and cost theory, students, the short run and the long run has nothing to do with time. Just remember that only in production and cost theory, students, the short run and the long run has nothing to do with time. Okay? In production and cost theory, students, that is also known as the theory of the firm, right? It is always assumed that you are operating with two resources. Two resources, or it is also called inputs, right? Because look, you can't produce goods and services out of thin air. You need resources to produce goods and services. That is what we've learned in the theory of demand and supply, even in the beginning stages of microeconomics. When we looked at what is economics, we've heard of factors of production. All right. So we have two resources or inputs, and that is normally known as capital, right, in the form of machinery and equipment, and labor. So remember, the aim of the business, students, of any firm is to maximize profit. The main objective of the firm or the business is to maximize profits. All right? And of course, the formula for profit is equal to total revenue minus total cost. You can't just maximize profit. You need to do some things over here to maximize that profit. Do you see? Maximizing profit is not a pipe dream for a business. Because in order to maximize profit, you need to maximize production. You need to produce something, okay? And of course, in order to produce something, you need resources. You see, you need your capital, you need your labor. Also, when you maximize production, you will maximize total revenue. Total revenue is also known as sales. All right. Also, what you need to do is you need to minimize costs. You need to keep costs as low as possible. And in doing so, you maximize total revenue, you minimize total cost, and in that way, you will maximize your profit. You see. But let's get back to the long run and the short run, students. The short run, students, is basically where one input is fixed. The short run, and this is in theory, in the short run, one input fixed, and the input that is fixed, students, is capital. That's fixed in the short run. And one input is variable, and that is labor. Variable meaning, students, that if you as a business and you are operating in the short run, you want to increase your profits, the only way in which you can do that is by hiring more workers. Are we together? You can only change the number of workers. If you want to maximize your production, you hire more workers. If you want to minimize your cost, you fire your workers. But you cannot change the amount of machinery and equipment that you have. You can only change the amount of labor. You see. So labor is variable, right? But in the long run, students, again, long run has nothing to do with time. In the long run, all inputs are variable, right? So you can change the amount of labor, you can change the amount of capital, however you see fit, because you are operating in the long run, because all of your inputs are variable. If you want to increase your production, you can buy more or rent more machines, or you can hire more workers, you see. If you want to minimize cost, you can get rid of your machines and you can fire your workers, because in the long run, you have more flexibility. You see, you're not constrained in the long run as you were in the short run. You see. So if we look at question 42, based on our knowledge of the theory, we can already cut out number 1, because again, it has nothing to do with time. Okay, then we look at option 2. Option 2 says, the short run is a period of time during which the quantity of at least one input is fixed and the quantities of the other inputs can be varied. That sounds correct, eh? But let's read further. The short run is a period in which the quantities of all inputs can be varied. That's wrong. Not all inputs can be varied in the short run. One input is fixed and one input is varied. You see? So option number 3 is incorrect. Then option 4 says the long run is a period at which all quantities of all factor inputs are fixed. But look, in the long run, all inputs are variable. You see? So option 4 is also incorrect, which leaves us with option 2. The short run is a period of time during which the quantity of at least one input is fixed and the quantities of the other inputs can be varied. And that is our answer, students. Option number 2, 100% correct over there. Are we all sorted? Alrighty then. I think we have like 10 or 12 minutes left, eh? Let's see if we can maybe do a few more. Alright. Also note, students, that you have your assessment that is due, eh? So kindly reach out for consultation. I will avail myself over the weekend. Okay. Let's look at question 43, except Sunday. Right, so do send through your emails. I know some of you have already sent emails through, but please kindly do resend them, because for the last 2 weeks I've been on study leave and I was extremely busy. Okay, let's look at question 43. Question 43 says, which one of the following statements is correct? So it talks about implicit costs and explicit costs. All right. Now, let's see. Option number 1 says implicit costs are monetary payments for factors of production and other inputs bought or hired by the firm. That doesn't sound correct because look, students, when you start a business, okay, when you start a business, you are going to incur explicit costs because look, it is always assumed that you are going to rent a property. You see, so that means you need to pay for rent. Let's say, for example, I used to work as a lecturer. I quit my job as a lecturer. I am now wanting to open up my own restaurant. You see, I've used my savings as startup capital for my business, right? So what costs am I going to incur? I am going to incur explicit costs first because I am starting my business. You see, so the explicit cost, students, that I'm going to incur includes the rent, right? The rent, the cost, the salaries and wages of my workers in the restaurant, the water, energy, telephone, etc., delivery. Those will be my explicit costs, right? And that is actually the monetary payments for the factors of production and other inputs bought or hired by the firm. Because the salaries of the workers, that is a cost of a factor of production. You see, so this part over here, the monetary payments, right, let me highlight it. The monetary payments for the factors of production and other inputs bought or hired by the firm, students. That is basically your explicit costs. You see, that is not your implicit cost. So option number 1 is incorrect because implicit costs are not monetary payments for factors of production. That is explicit cost. That should have been explicit cost over there. Are we together, students? That should have been explicit cost over there. You see. If we look at number 2 says economic cost minus explicit cost is equal to implicit cost because look, the formula for economic cost, students, when you talk about economics, economics takes into account everything. So economic cost is equal to explicit plus implicit cost. But first, before we go into that, what are implicit costs? Remember I said that I quit my job as a lecturer, you see, and I now want to start my own business. I want to start a restaurant. My implicit costs are those opportunity costs that I gave up, you see. And what is the opportunity cost that I gave up? It is the salary that I earned as a lecturer. That is an opportunity cost that I gave up. Are we together? Also, remember I used the money, I used my savings as startup capital, but I could have invested that savings somewhere and I could have earned interest. You see, that interest that I could have earned on my savings, that is also an opportunity cost. So my implicit cost, students, are those opportunity costs that I gave up. Do you see? But economic cost takes into account, students, the explicit cost that I'm currently incurring in my current business, but it also takes into account the implicit cost that I gave up. Do you see? So if we want to rewrite this formula over here, it says economic cost minus explicit cost is equal to implicit cost. That's actually correct. Okay? We could do something like this. We can say economic cost minus explicit is equal to implicit cost. You see, that is absolutely correct over there. Because economic cost is equal to explicit plus implicit cost. So if we take the economic cost and we minus the explicit cost from it, what we are left with is implicit cost. Do you see? So option number 2 is absolutely correct. That is the correct one over there. We can test option number 3. It says the economic costs of production are equal to the opportunity costs, which in turn are equal to explicit costs. But explicit costs are monetary payments. Do you see? Explicit costs are not opportunity costs. Explicit costs are monetary payments. Implicit costs are opportunity costs. So this statement 3 over there, it's incorrect. Are we together, students? Statement 3 is incorrect over there. Then if we look at option number 4, option number 4 says economic or excess profit is equal to total revenue minus implicit cost. That doesn't sound correct. Because the formula for economic profit, students, the formula for economic profit, right, is equal to total revenue minus economic cost. And what is economic cost, students? Economic cost is the sum of explicit plus implicit cost. But this option goes on to lie by saying it is total revenue minus implicit cost only. No, it's total revenue minus economic costs. And economic cost is made up of explicit plus implicit costs. Are we together, students? Alrighty then, students, I believe unfortunately we have ran a little bit out of time over there. But we will continue with this next week as well, right, on production and costs. And of course, there's also the unit on the market structures, perfect competition, monopoly, oligopoly, and monopolistic competition. And then, of course, there's the labor market thereafter, all right? But we will continue with this next week onwards, right? Do tune in on Wednesday, next week, Wednesday, from 5 until 7. And also next week, Thursday, God willing, from 7:30. All right, students. But before you guys leave, let me just stop the recording. Okay. Before you leave, I would like to